Hey guys, Ivan here with the Old School Labs, and I saw this post of Dennis James, who was a coach of Big Ramy back in the day. For example, right here on the left, he was prepping Big Ramy for 2013. That was the first year he qualified and actually competed at the Mr Olympia. He's his trainer now. I mean, they kind of worked together before this Mr Olympia, while his coach was Chad Nichols. So, Dennis James, he posted this shot right here. And you can see Big Ramy day out of Mr. Olympia 2020, where he won, of course. And photo on the left is him one day out of 2013 New York Pro. Even though the lighting is completely different, the one on the right, 2020, he has a light bulb or neon light right above his head. It's a strong light. It makes you look more impressive, right? Like harder. But the one on the left, it's just the natural light, outside light. He's standing next to a window, and you cannot really see, it doesn't really give you the effect of the hardness, but you will still see some differences in these two physiques, in these two versions actually of a physique, and I think it's pretty noticeable that Big Ramy grew. Yeah, he gained a lot of density to his muscles everywhere. So like his shoulders, take a look at the shoulders, they look just much bigger. You can definitely notice the same thing in the upper pecs. I mean, his legs too, even though they were freakishly big back in the day, they're looking denser, thicker now as well. You can also see the lats, that are looking bigger, and calves also seem to have grown. Overall, just compare the size of his head to the rest of the body, you will notice that his body is taking much more space now. Even though his weight is probably almost the same, he gained. He definitely gained. I don't know how much is this in pounds, but he definitely looks bigger. Take a look at the arms as well. The left bicep especially. But I mean, everything grew, really. And another thing grew that wasn't supposed to grow, and that's his waist. His waist was way smaller back in the day. So let me show you a couple of photos from 2013 New York Pro, which was very arguably, but by the opinions of some people, his best ever, simply because his waist was way smaller. He was not as conditioned, as matured, as dense and everything, but waist was way smaller, and that made him look really impressive, really freaky. So that's a big factor, right? Though you will be able to notice a lot of flaws in his physique, such as gyno. Yeah, he had a bad case of gyno at the time. And also, there wasn't a lot of separation in the quads. They were big, they were conditioned, sure, but not a lot of separation, no depth, in those striations, which definitely is something that you can notice in 2020 version of Big Ramy. You can actually notice some separation between the teardrop, the outer sweep, the mid-quad details, the inner part. It's all kind of separated, not the best separation of all time, nothing close to that, but you can notice something. The cost for this was the waist. I guess that was the price. He paid it. Was it worth it though? He did win the Mr. Olympia, but what do you think? Do you like it? I know you're not a judge. I mean, maybe you are. I don't know who's watching this, but most likely you're not a judge and your opinion won't matter, but you still get to have an opinion. I mean, bodybuilding is an opinion-based sport, really. It's very subjective, so you can have your own thoughts. You can have your own idea of what is a perfect Mr. Olympia physique. And how much do you like this? It's up to you to say. But we'll get back to that question a little bit later. Let's check out the other 2013 New York Pro photos of Big Ramy. And you will notice here, so you can see it, this guy was ecstatic. For the love of God, I would never expect to say this. I mean, I forgot, but this guy was actually kind of ecstatic at one point. His waist was so much smaller. What the hell happened? He gained a lot of muscle, yeah, he gained a lot of tissue, but the main problem with him was conditioning, and he got the conditioning to a certain point where it was good enough to win the Mr. Olympia, but he also added a lot of tissue, and it resulted with much wider waist. You can especially see it from behind, and there is no gyno to draw your attention. Yeah, these are not the most shredded glutes or hamstrings ever. His were way more shredded in 2020, and his back was not the biggest back of all time, but with that small waist, it just all looks so freaky. I know it was not enough to win the Mr. Olympia or get even close to it. He actually took 7th or 8th place at the Mr. Olympia 2013. I mean, I get it, but I just gotta say, this was an impressive version of Big Ramy if you ask me. 2 years fast forward, and we have 2015 Mr. Olympia, where he had sort of a metamorphosis. I mean, he grew so much. I don't know, maybe he was natural before. It could be the case. And I'm joking, of course. Here, he looks, I don't know, insane. Take a look at the size of this guy. I mean, his head is the size of his bicep, basically. I think his shoulder is bigger than his head. And I mean, there is like room for like 20 heads of his to fit in his legs, in his one leg. So that's the ratio of Big Ramy. It was absolutely ridiculous at this point. I'm not saying he got any smaller from this point, but you can notice that he was not exactly super conditioned. He was able to grow, but the separation still wasn't there. I mean, look at the quads. It's just all big mess. You cannot see any difference between other muscle groups, I mean, other parts of a muscle group in quads, for example. You know, it's a muscle with 4 heads, and I only see one, really. And overall, I mean, he wasn't conditioned. He was big. He was huge. So the next year, the game plan was different. He realized, hey, I'm big enough. I think I'm big enough. And he definitely was. So he decided to go hardcore on conditioning. He did that, and then he came looking much smaller. If you remember, guys, if you're watching YouTube back in the day, and Louis Marco called him Medium Ramy. So he says Big Ramy is not Big Ramy anymore. Now he's called Medium Ramy. And he certainly was medium for his standards. He lost a lot of size. He did not, live up to his expectations, the expectations that people had of him. He wasn't as big as he usually is. I mean, he didn't justify his nickname, Big Ramy. Here you can notice that his abs were very prominent. The legs looked lean. You can see some feathers right there. I mean, can you see it? Like there is some feathering going on, some kind of high green action, with the quads, but not really that deep. But it's kind of visible. So he kind of got lean, but he still didn't have those deep cuts. I think it's mainly genetic. I don't think he will ever get that. But from the back, now 2020, his biggest problem was his lower back. It was like watery or fat. I don't know. There were wrinkles in the skin. And here you cannot really see that. You can see the lats attached very, very low. You can see the separation between the lats and the spinal erectors. And you can also see that his glutes were absolutely peeled here, but much smaller, right? I mean, he lost a lot of size on those glutes and also the legs. Like, look at the gap between his legs. You cannot see that today, no. And the size of the back overall. Like, he wasn't big. He was conditioned, though. But that's not what the judges were expecting of him. This was sort of a surprise for the judges and for the fans, but that wasn't the reason why he didn't win the Mr. Olympia or play super high. The reason was because this just doesn't look that impressive. For his structure, he needs to be super, super thick, super big. He has a big frame and he can, fill it up, and so that's what he should stick with, and he did that. This was 2016 actually. And the next year he came conditioned but pretty full, and that is arguably his best version ever. Was that the best version of him, or 2020 is like the biggest topic, the biggest question of this video? Why am I even considering 2017 as his best ever? Obviously because he was second at that Mr. Olympia, and the lineup was very strong at that time. The only guy that he wasn't able to beat was Phil Heath, who was on. That was a good Phil Heath. 2017, that was a good Phil Heath. Yeah, his stomach was protruding a little bit, but he still had that crazy condition that he was known for. And that's how he beat Big Ramy. He was way more conditioned than him. And he was also big, 3D, full, everywhere. He was on, right? So when Phil Heath is on, the only guy that can beat him is Ronnie Coleman. And I think that's it. Those are two best bodybuilders of all time. Big Ramy, he came close in terms of placings. He was just second. He was runner-up. But honestly, I don't think it was really close. I think Phil Heath kind of blew Ramy out of the water. I don't think it was really close. But it was a good version of Big Ramy. It was something that made us believe he's going to become the Mr. Olympia soon, because he was second. There was only Phil Heath left. And Phil Heath can't be champion forever. And just like that, he lost the next year. But Big Ramy didn't really bring it. In 2018, he did not. 2019, he didn't even compete. This 2018 version of him was, again, same thing like before. Size with no conditioning. He was big, but watery, soft, whatever. Let's go back to 2017 version. Was this version his best ever? Was he bigger? Was he more conditioned? Did he have less flaws than now? Was he more dense? Was there more maturity? Was there more like striation and stuff? I don't think so. I don't think 2017 was his best ever. Even though he was second, he only didn't beat Phil Heath. I think with his 2020 Mr. Olympia version, he would challenge Phil Heath definitely way more if he competed against his 2017 version. It would be a battle, right? Who would win? That's a tough call. It would be close. I would still go, more to Phil Heath's side, but I'm not sure really, because in 2020 he was really good. He simply looked on, right? He was full, he was shredded, he had that maturity going on. I mean, look at the legs. There are separation. It doesn't look dead anymore. He was posing also very nicely. He changed some poses, the way he was hitting them, such as this one. He stopped crunching the abs in this pose in front double bicep. He opened up more, in my opinion. It looks much better. I would say that this is his best ever, but was it his most conditioned ever? Or was 2015 more conditioned than this? Or was it even his biggest? Was 2015, for example, his biggest ever? You tell me, guys. But if you think this is the most impressive Big Ramy of all time, let me know down below. If you don't, if you disagree, tell me about that as well. Please do. Anyways, guys, if you enjoyed this video about Big Ramy, like it. If you want to see more bodybuilding videos like this, subscribe. All the best, guys, and keep it old school.